Ah, that's how it always starts.
When The Lost World Jurassic Park hit theaters, it was one of the most anticipated sequels of the decade. Audiences expected more dinosaurs, more chaos, and more Spielberg magic. As expected, the film delivered in strange, unexpected ways. Behind the jungle chases and T-Rex rampages lies a treasure trove of bizarre production stories, odd creative choices, and downright weird facts that most fans have never heard. From animatronic mishaps to hurricane disasters, secret cameos, and gymnastic raptor battles, this sequel is full of surprises. Here are 20 weird facts you didn't know about The Lost World, Jurassic Park. 1. Spielberg directed reluctantly. When people think of The Lost World, Jurassic Park, they often imagine Steven Spielberg at the height of his filmmaking power, confidently returning to the director's chair after creating one of the most successful blockbusters of all time. But the reality behind the camera was far stranger. Spielberg did not actually want to direct the sequel. In interviews, he admitted that he felt exhausted after the original film and had emotionally poured himself into Schindler's List, which won him his long-awaited Academy Award. By the time Universal asked him to return for the dinosaur follow-up, Spielberg confessed that he only did so out of obligation. Jurassic Park had become a cultural earthquake, and the studio wanted lightning to strike twice. This reluctance seeped into the production. Spielberg described the filming process as one of the least enjoyable experiences of his career. Instead of his usual excitement on set, he admitted that he often delegated work to his second-unit team while he prepared his mind for other projects. He once said that he was like a kid who had already played with all the toys, meaning that he felt he had explored dinosaurs to his creative satisfaction in the first film. Yet despite his personal disinterest, he still brought an undeniable cinematic polish to the sequel, delivering unforgettable sequences like the cliffhanger trailer attack and the T-Rex loose in San Diego. The strangest part of this story is how his reluctance shaped the film's legacy. Fans noticed a difference in tone, critics debated whether his heart was truly in it, and Spielberg himself later admitted that The Lost World remains one of his least favorite directing experiences. It is a rare glimpse into a Hollywood legend making a blockbuster not out of passion, but because the world demanded it. 2. Jeff Goldblum's character got promoted. In the first Jurassic Park film, Jeff Goldblum's character, Dr. Ian Malcolm, was not the main attraction. He was quirky, sharp-witted, and delivered memorable one-liners about chaos theory. But he stood in the shadow of Sam Neill and Laura Dern, who carried the story. No one expected the sarcastic mathematician to return as the star of the sequel, yet that is exactly what happened. When Steven Spielberg looked at which character could lead audiences back into a dinosaur-filled world, he chose the most unlikely candidate. The decision was unusual in Hollywood terms. Supporting comic relief characters rarely make the jump to leading man status. Malcolm was not a rugged hero. He was a thinker, a cynic, a man more comfortable warning about the dangers of tampering with nature than firing weapons or leading expeditions. Yet in The Lost World, he became the center of the story. The audience follows him as he is pulled reluctantly back into danger, not to study science, but to rescue his loved ones and confront the chaos he had once predicted. Jeff Goldblum himself leaned into the strangeness of this promotion. His lanky presence, his sly humor, and his nervous energy gave the sequel an entirely different flavor than the first film. Instead of a confident adventurer, viewers got a man in over his head, stumbling through jungles and facing raptors with equal parts terror and sarcasm. That shift was both celebrated and criticized. Some loved the unconventional hero. Others longed for the more traditional adventurer role filled by Alan Grant in the first movie. The strangest part is that it worked. Malcolm's promotion transformed him into a cult figure. Decades later, he remains one of the most quoted characters in the entire Jurassic Park franchise, precisely because he was never meant to be the hero in the first place. 3. The book was written because of the movie. The story of how the Lost World novel came to exist is as unusual as the dinosaurs it describes. When Michael Crichton first wrote Jurassic Park in the late 1980s, he never imagined creating a sequel. The novel stood alone as a cautionary tale about science, greed, and the dangers of resurrecting creatures from the past. But then Steven Spielberg adapted it into the groundbreaking 1993 film, and the world could not get enough of the prehistoric spectacle. Suddenly, there was massive demand for more. Universal Studios approached Crichton and asked him to write a follow-up book. At first, he resisted. He was a novelist who rarely revisited his own creations, and he felt the story of Jurassic Park had ended with the destruction of the island. Yet Spielberg and the studio wanted material to shape a new film, and eventually Crichton agreed. He began sketching ideas that would form the backbone of the Lost World novel published in 1995. What makes this fact strange is that the natural order of adaptation was reversed. Normally, a book inspires a movie. In this case, a movie inspired a book which then inspired its own movie. Crichton invented new characters, brought back Ian Malcolm, who had died in the original novel, and gave Spielberg and his team just enough material to construct the cinematic sequel. The book itself was a bestseller, but many readers noted it felt like it had been designed with Hollywood in mind. Crichton later admitted that he only wrote it because Spielberg asked. The Lost World novel is a rare artifact in literature, a story born not from an author's inspiration, but from the gravitational pull of cinema. Without the film, there would have been no book, and without the book, the sequel film would have looked very different. 4. The baby Tyrannosaurus Rex. Animatronic was like a fragile puppet. Among the many creatures that appeared in the Lost World, none was more delicate or troublesome than the baby Tyrannosaurus Rex. While the full-sized Rex animatronics were massive machines weighing several tons, the baby was designed to be small, nimble, and expressive. To achieve this realism, the effects team at Stan Winston Studios created a puppet so fragile that it required constant care as if it were alive. Crew members described the puppet as having skin that would dry and crack under the hot studio lights. Each day, they applied a special oil to keep it supple, almost like moisturizing the skin of a real animal. The puppet was operated by multiple puppeteers working in tight synchronization. One person managed the head and jaw, while another controlled the legs and tail. Small servo motors hidden inside its body allowed the baby Rex to blink, breathe, and whimper when injured. These details gave the illusion of life, but they also made the prop extremely vulnerable. If even one motor overheated or one cable snapped, the entire illusion collapsed. Actors like Julianne Moore and Vince Vaughn were often surprised by how realistic the puppet felt in their arms. Its skin was warm to the touch because of the electronics inside, and when it moved, it gave the eerie impression of holding a real prehistoric creature. Behind the camera, however, technicians hovered nervously, ready to fix any malfunction within seconds. The strange truth is that this fragile puppet almost stole the spotlight. Spielberg himself admitted that the baby Rex scenes carried unexpected emotional weight. Audiences felt sympathy for the wounded creature, which added layers to the story. What looked like a simple special effect was actually a carefully maintained, high-maintenance puppet that required as much attention as a living star. 5. A real storm destroyed part of the set. Filming a dinosaur movie is difficult enough without nature joining the production, but that is exactly what happened during The Lost World. The crew chose the Hawaiian island of Kauai for several of its lush jungle locations, just as they had done for the original Jurassic Park. However, fate had other plans. While the crew prepared their equipment and constructed elaborate sets deep in the tropical landscape, a powerful storm rolled across the island. There was no gentle rainfall. It was a fierce Pacific hurricane that ripped through palm trees, washed out roads, and smashed pieces of carefully built scenery. Some of the lightweight structures designed to mimic Isla Sorna's research stations were flattened overnight. Expensive lighting rigs and cameras had to be quickly covered or moved, yet several were damaged beyond repair. For a production already under pressure to deliver a blockbuster, this natural disaster added unexpected delays and costs. Spielberg later admitted that shooting in remote island environments meant surrendering control to the elements. The crew would spend days waiting for skies to clear and mud to dry before they could roll cameras again. At one point, trucks hauling equipment became stuck in the soaked ground, forcing team members to physically push vehicles out of the muck. The experience reminded everyone that while they were filming a story about humans trying to control nature, in reality, nature was controlling them. What makes this fact even stranger is that Kauai had suffered another storm during the filming of the first Jurassic Park just a few years earlier. Lightning, rain, and wind seemed to haunt Spielberg's dinosaur productions. For The Lost World, the damage was serious enough to alter shooting schedules, proving that sometimes the scariest force on set is not a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but the unpredictable wrath of weather. 6. The Tyrannosaurus Rex attacking San Diego was not in the book. One of the most unforgettable moments in The Lost World comes near the end when a massive Tyrannosaurus Rex escapes captivity and storms through the streets of San Diego. This scene feels like a cross between Jurassic Park and a classic monster film, and it left audiences stunned. Yet the strangest part is that none of this appears in Michael Crichton's novel. The book ends with dinosaurs confined to Isla Sorna, while the city rampage was entirely Steven Spielberg's invention. Spielberg explained that after 2 hours of jungle chases, he wanted to give audiences one more surprise. He felt the film needed a finale that had never been seen before. The idea of a dinosaur loose in an urban environment thrilled him, and so the production team designed the elaborate San Diego sequence almost from scratch. Streets were recreated on sound stages, miniature buildings were built for wide shots, and computer-generated effects extended the destruction. The inspiration drew partly from old Godzilla movies, where giant creatures terrorized cities. Spielberg even inserted a playful nod to those films by showing Japanese tourists running in fear, while exclaiming in their language that this was happening again. It was a tongue-in-cheek reference that only added to the sense of surreal spectacle. The sequence was technically demanding. Crew members had to blend animatronic Rex heads with digital full-body shots while also using practical miniatures to simulate cars being crushed and buses overturned. The final result was a sequence that critics either loved or hated. Some argued it felt like a different movie stitched onto the end, while others celebrated it as a bold escalation of the Jurassic Park mythos. Regardless of opinion, the San Diego rampage became the defining image of the sequel, a scene born entirely from Spielberg's imagination rather than the pages of the book. 7. The raptor's bark came from dolphins. When audiences sat in dark theaters in 1997 and heard the chilling screeches of the raptors in The Lost World, they were not listening to any prehistoric recording. Instead, they were hearing a bizarre collage of modern animals stitched together by the sound design team. The most surprising ingredient was the voice of dolphins. Gary Rydstrom, the Academy Award-winning sound designer, explained that the distinctive raptor bark was created by manipulating dolphin calls. The high-pitched squeaks were slowed down, deepened, and layered until they sounded menacing rather than playful. To make the raptors feel truly alive, the team added other animal voices into the mix. Walrus grunts, horse snorts, and even the cough of a human baby were blended to give the predators a complex range of sounds. This strange cocktail of noises gave the raptors their terrifying personality. When they barked in the tall grass or hissed in the research station, the audience subconsciously recognized something familiar yet could not quite place it. That unease made the raptors even more frightening. During production, Spielberg insisted that the dinosaurs should never sound like movie monsters. They had to feel grounded in the natural world. By using dolphins and other real animals, the sound designers followed his direction while still inventing something otherworldly. What makes this fact even stranger is that dolphins are among the most intelligent and friendly creatures on Earth, often celebrated for their playfulness. Yet their voices, once distorted, became the terrifying language of cinematic killers. The raptor bark has since become iconic, instantly recognizable to fans, and proof of how far filmmakers will go to craft a sound that lodges in the imagination. The next time you hear a dolphin at an aquarium, you might be surprised to think of a raptor waiting in the shadows. 8. The gymnastics scene was Spielberg's daughter's idea. One of the most debated and unusual moments in The Lost World occurs when young Kelly Malcolm uses her gymnastics skills to kick a raptor out of a window. For many fans, this scene seemed over the top, almost cartoonish compared to the darker tone of the rest of the film. The origin of this odd sequence lies not in Michael Crichton's novel, but in Steven Spielberg's own household. At the time, Spielberg's daughter was deeply involved in gymnastics training. She often showed her father new routines and tricks, flipping and swinging with enthusiasm. Inspired by her passion, Spielberg decided to weave this detail into the film. He imagined Kelly, the daughter of Ian Malcolm, using her athletic ability not just as a character quirk, but as a weapon against one of the deadliest dinosaurs on Isla Sorna. The result was a scene that instantly divided audiences. Some viewers cheered as a child fought back against the terrifying creatures. Others felt it was implausible and even unintentionally humorous. Yet regardless of opinion, the sequence became one of the most memorable parts of the movie. It was a reminder that Spielberg often slipped personal touches into his blockbusters, drawing directly from family life to shape the stories he told. Behind the scenes, the stunt required careful planning. A trained gymnast performed the flips on a bar constructed to look like jungle equipment, while animatronic and digital raptors were combined to sell the illusion of impact. Spielberg later admitted he included the moment largely as a gift to his daughter, who loved seeing her favorite sport represented on screen. The strange beauty of this fact is that a private father-daughter connection ended up immortalized in a blockbuster seen by millions. The gymnastics kick may be controversial, but it stands as proof of how personal inspiration can ripple into cinematic history. 9. Julianne Moore nearly got crushed. Working alongside life-sized animatronic dinosaurs was both thrilling and terrifying for the cast of The Lost World. While audiences marveled at how real the Tyrannosaurus Rex appeared on screen, the truth is that these machines were incredibly dangerous. They were built on steel frames with hydraulic systems strong enough to snap bones if an actor stood in the wrong place at the wrong time. Julianne Moore, who played Sarah Harding, experienced this danger firsthand when she nearly lost her life during filming. In one sequence, Moore had to lie close to the head of a massive Rex animatronic while it roared and snapped its jaws. The creature's head was controlled by a team of puppeteers, but the hydraulics powering it were so powerful that even the smallest mistake could be disastrous. At one point, the dinosaur head came down with unexpected force, pinning Moore beneath its weight. Crew members rushed forward to stop the machine, but for a few terrifying seconds, the actress was trapped under tons of mechanical steel disguised as reptilian flesh. Moore later recalled how frightening the moment felt, admitting that she genuinely believed she might be crushed. The incident was a reminder that although these animatronics looked like puppets, they were in fact heavy industrial machines capable of serious harm. Safety crews began enforcing even stricter rules after the accident, limiting how close actors could get to the moving parts without special precautions. The strangest aspect is how seamless the danger looks on screen. Viewers see Moore interacting with the dinosaur and assume it is all carefully controlled. Behind the camera, however, one slip nearly turned movie magic into tragedy. Her close call stands as a haunting reminder that bringing extinct creatures back to life, even through Hollywood engineering, comes with very real risks. 10. Cameo by the godfather of Jurassic Park. In the world of Jurassic Park, Michael Crichton is more than an author. He is the very architect who dreamed up the science, the chaos, and the dinosaurs that made the franchise possible. Yet most audiences watching The Lost World had no idea that Crichton himself quietly slipped into the movie in a blink, and you will miss its cameo. Spielberg was fond of honoring the people who helped shape his stories, and Crichton was at the top of that list. During a video conference sequence where InGen executives discuss their plans for exploiting Isla Sorna, a familiar face can be spotted among the background participants. There sits Michael Crichton, the writer who created the original Jurassic Park novel, calmly observing the fictional corporate scheming that his own imagination had birthed years earlier. The cameo was never meant to draw attention. Crichton was not an actor and had no interest in distracting from the narrative. Instead, it served as a private joke and a tribute, a way for Spielberg to weave the real godfather of Jurassic Park into the cinematic fabric of the sequel. Crew members later confirmed that Crichton enjoyed the playful gesture, though he rarely spoke about it in interviews. This odd appearance adds another layer to the film's strange history. The man who once warned through fiction about corporations meddling with forces beyond their control ended up portraying, even briefly, one of those very figures on screen. For a few seconds, reality and imagination blurred. Viewers who notice it experience a rare connection between the world of the story and the mind that invented it. It is a fittingly weird piece of trivia, a reminder that even in a film about cloned dinosaurs, the strangest surprises sometimes come from the people behind the scenes. 11. The Compsognathus were inspired by chickens. The smallest dinosaurs in the Lost World were also some of the most unsettling. The Compsognathus, often called compies, may have been only the size of a chicken, but their swarming attacks left a lasting impression on audiences. The inspiration for how these creatures moved and hunted came not from prehistoric fossils, but from the everyday barnyard. Steven Spielberg instructed his team to study chickens closely in order to design the compy's behavior. Spielberg had always been fascinated by the evolutionary link between birds and dinosaurs. Long before paleontologists widely popularized the theory, he noticed the similarities in movement and temperament. For the compies, he asked animators and puppeteers to mimic the way chickens pecked, tilted their heads, and darted about in small groups. These bird-like movements translated perfectly to the screen, making the compies seem both oddly familiar and unnervingly alien. On set, the actors were directed to imagine being surrounded by a flock of aggressive chickens. The visual effects team later filled in the digital models, layering in quick, jittery motions that gave the impression of hyperactive reptiles hunting in packs. This creative decision paid off most memorably in the scene where a young girl encounters the compies near the beach, and later when actor Richard Attenborough's replacement team member is swarmed in the forest. The sheer number of small, snapping mouths echoed the relentless way chickens sometimes mob food, tossed into a coop. What makes this fact so strange is how something as harmless as a barnyard chicken became the model for terror. Spielberg transformed an animal associated with farms and breakfast into the basis for a frightening prehistoric predator. It was a clever reminder that the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park were not entirely creatures of imagination, but reflections of living animals we see every day, sharpened into cinematic nightmares. 12. A crew member got stuck in the Tyrannosaurus Rex head. The animatronic dinosaurs used in The Lost World were feats of engineering that blended artistry with machinery. They were also massive machines that could easily become dangerous for the people tasked with operating them. One of the strangest behind-the-scenes incidents occurred when a crew member actually became trapped inside the head of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The head of the Rex was a mechanical marvel. It could roar, snap its jaws, move its eyes, and shake convincingly enough to fool even the actors standing inches away. Inside the giant skull were panels, servo motors, and hydraulic systems, and technicians often had to crawl into the structure to make adjustments. During one repair session, a puppeteer squeezed inside to fix a cable, but the hatch closed behind him and jammed. With the animatronic partially active and weighing several tons, the situation quickly turned alarming. The crew members shouted for help, and others rushed to free him. For several tense minutes, he remained stuck in near darkness, surrounded by steel machinery disguised in latex skin. Fortunately, the team managed to pry open the hatch before the Rex was powered back on. He emerged shaken, but unharmed, though the story quickly became a source of nervous laughter among the crew. What makes this moment so bizarre is the image it leaves behind. While audiences watched the Tyrannosaurus Rex as the ultimate predator, behind the camera it doubled as a mechanical trap that could swallow a man whole. Spielberg later joked about how his dinosaurs were dangerous both on screen and off. The incident serves as a reminder that bringing extinct giants to life required more than imagination. It demanded machines so complex that even the people who built them risked becoming part of the monster itself. 13. The trailer hanging over the cliff was real. One of the most gripping sequences in The Lost World shows a research trailer dangling precariously over a cliff as characters fight for their lives inside. Audiences assumed the effect was achieved with clever editing and digital trickery, but in truth, much of it was terrifyingly real. Spielberg insisted that the danger should feel authentic, so the production team actually suspended the trailer over a steep drop, placing the actors inside while cameras rolled. The trailer was built on a steel frame to handle the immense weight and was secured with powerful cranes. Still, from the perspective of the performers inside, the experience was unnerving. Julianne Moore later admitted that staring through the glass floor at what seemed like a 100-foot plunge below made her genuinely afraid. Harnesses and safety rigs were attached, but the sensation of being trapped in a box dangling above a void was enough to cause real panic. To enhance the tension, rain machines poured water across the set, while wind machines rattled the structure. Crew members outside used hidden controls to tilt the trailer just enough to make it sway violently. Every groan of metal and shudder of movement added to the authenticity of the scene. Inside, the actors were not only pretending to be terrified, they were responding to real fear as the set shifted beneath them. The camera crew captured shots from above and below, combining them with miniature models for the wide views of the cliff. But the close-ups of actors clutching at the glass and sliding across the floor were all real reactions. This decision to risk such realism gave the sequence its unforgettable power. What audiences remember as thrilling cinema was, for the cast, a genuine brush with the sensation of falling into the abyss. 14. A deleted scene showed pteranodons attacking. When audiences watched The Lost World in 1997, they saw raptors, stegosaurs, a baby Tyrannosaurus rex, and of course the full-grown Rex terrorizing San Diego. Yet one group of dinosaurs was missing, even though they had been planned from the start. Early in production, Spielberg and his team designed a sequence in which a flock of pteranodons would swoop down and attack characters as they tried to escape the island. Storyboards were drawn, concept art was created, and early special effects tests even imagined how the winged reptiles would move through the air. The scene was meant to take place near the end of the film, providing one last terrifying obstacle before the survivors made it to safety. However, Spielberg eventually decided to cut it. He felt the San Diego rampage was already a strong finale and feared that an additional airborne attack might overwhelm the pacing. The decision left the pteranodons absent from the sequel, even though their shadows lingered in production notes and unused artwork. What makes this fact fascinating is how close audiences came to seeing flying reptiles years earlier than they actually did. Fans had to wait until Jurassic Park 3 in 2001 to finally witness the pteranodons unleashed in full. The Lost World could have introduced them, altering the legacy of the franchise by giving the second film an even broader range of dinosaur threats. Some of the unused designs showed pteranodons grabbing humans and carrying them through the sky, while others depicted swarms blocking escape routes. Crew members later admitted that the sequence was technically ambitious for its time and may have stretched the limits of visual effects. Though the attack never reached the screen, its ghost remains one of the strangest what-if moments in Jurassic Park history. 15. Spielberg snuck in a Godzilla burn. When the Tyrannosaurus Rex finally stomps its way into San Diego near the end of The Lost World, the sequence feels like a love letter to classic monster movies. But hidden within the chaos is a clever joke that only some viewers noticed. As the Rex crashes through the streets, a group of Japanese tourists runs in terror. They shout in their native language about how this disaster is happening again, a tongue-in-cheek reference to the Godzilla films that had dominated Japanese cinema for decades. Spielberg was fully aware that critics and audiences would compare his city rampage to Godzilla. Instead of avoiding the comparison, he leaned into it with humor. The line was both a playful nod and a sly burn, acknowledging the cultural legacy of Godzilla while also suggesting that Jurassic Park was now carrying the torch of giant creature spectacle. For longtime fans of monster movies, the reference felt like an inside joke from one filmmaker to another. The moment was filmed with real Japanese extras who were encouraged to improvise their lines while fleeing the animatronic Rex head and the miniature car sets used for certain shots. Their panic looked genuine, but the sly dialogue added a layer of comedy amid the destruction. What makes this fact particularly strange is that only bilingual viewers or those reading translated subtitles could fully appreciate the joke. Many audiences missed it entirely, focusing instead on the roaring Rex. But for those who caught it, the moment became a hidden gem of the film, a winking acknowledgement that Spielberg was not just making a dinosaur thriller, but also engaging in a cinematic conversation with the monster movie tradition. The San Diego sequence may be divisive, but Spielberg's Godzilla burn remains one of the cleverest Easter eggs buried within The Lost World. 16. Richard Attenborough only appears in one scene.
I said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, that noise then." I said, "Yes."
In the original Jurassic Park, Richard Attenborough as John Hammond was the heart of the story. His wide-eyed dream of resurrecting dinosaurs clashed with the grim realities of science and nature, and his gentle charisma gave the film its human anchor. When The Lost World arrived 4 years later, many fans expected Hammond to once again play a central role. Instead, Attenborough appeared for only one brief scene, a cameo that left audiences surprised. Spielberg decided early in development that the sequel should shift focus. The story would follow Ian Malcolm as the reluctant hero, while Hammond would be sidelined, weakened by illness, and left to deliver exposition from the safety of his home. The opening sequence shows Hammond addressing a group of reporters and investors, explaining the dangers of exploiting Isla Sorna. Then, just as quickly as he arrives, he disappears from the narrative, leaving the action to unfold without him. Behind the scenes, the decision was partly practical. Attenborough was in his 70s and recovering from heart surgery during production. The long days on location in Hawaii and California would have been grueling. Spielberg felt it was safer and more respectful to give him a small but dignified role rather than demanding another full performance under difficult conditions. The result was a curious absence. Hammond's vision had created the entire franchise, yet in the second film he became a background figure, a frail man trying to prevent corporate greed from repeating his mistakes. His single scene carries symbolic weight, showing a dreamer humbled by reality. Still, many fans wished they had seen more of him. Attenborough's gentle authority lingered even in a few minutes of screen time, reminding viewers that behind all the chaos, Hammond's dream was both the spark and the curse of Jurassic Park. 17. Eddie Carr's death was Spielberg's punishment. Among the new characters introduced in The Lost World was Eddie Carr, the resourceful engineer played by Richard Schiff. Eddie was the man who built the high-tech equipment, maintained the vehicles, and quietly supported the entire expedition. He was also one of the most sympathetic characters, a figure who seemed destined to survive because of his intelligence and loyalty. Yet, to the shock of audiences, Eddie died one of the most gruesome deaths in the franchise, torn apart by two adult Tyrannosaurus Rexes while trying to save his friends. The death scene is brutal. Eddie anchors the research trailer with a winch, risking his life as the Rexes circle. His efforts nearly succeed, but the ropes snap and he is dragged out of his vehicle. The two dinosaurs seize him and violently pull him in opposite directions. The camera cuts away before showing the full horror, but the implication is clear. Eddie's courage is rewarded with a merciless end. Richard Schiff later joked that Spielberg killed his character as a kind of punishment. At the time, Schiff had been gaining recognition on television, and within a few years he would become famous on The West Wing. In interviews, he half-seriously suggested that Spielberg saw him as too busy or too successful, and decided to eliminate him from the story in spectacular fashion. What makes this fact strange is the contrast between Eddie's gentle nature and the savagery of his death. Many fans considered him the moral center of the team, a man who put others first. Instead of escaping, he became one of the sequel's most shocking casualties. Spielberg himself admitted he wanted audiences to feel genuine loss, and Eddie's sacrifice provided exactly that. His death remains one of the darkest and most unforgettable moments in Jurassic Park history. 18. Raptors had feathers in early designs. When The Lost World was in development, the design team at Stan Winston Studios considered giving the raptors a new look. By the mid-1990s, paleontologists were increasingly confident that many theropod dinosaurs, including velociraptors, had feathers. Spielberg and his artists studied the research and even produced concept art showing raptors with brightly colored plumage and feathery crests. For a time, it seemed the sequel would showcase a more scientifically accurate dinosaur. The designs were striking. Early sketches displayed raptors with quills along their arms and heads resembling giant predatory birds. Animators tested digital models to see how feathers might sway and ripple as the creatures moved. Puppeteers experimented with attaching feather-like material to maquettes, searching for a balance between realism and menace. The idea was to remind audiences of the evolutionary link between birds and dinosaurs, a theme hinted at in the first film but not yet fully realized. Ultimately, Spielberg decided against it. He feared that audiences in 1997 would not accept raptors that looked too bird-like. The sleek, reptilian appearance of the original Jurassic Park raptors had already become iconic, and Universal worried that changing them might confuse or disappoint viewers. So the feathers were abandoned, and the raptors of The Lost World remained scaly predators, visually consistent with the earlier film. What makes this fact fascinating is that scientific evidence has only grown stronger since then. Today, it is widely accepted that velociraptors were feathered. If Spielberg had embraced the research in the 1990s, The Lost World might have been hailed as ahead of its time. Instead, the decision highlighted the tension between cinematic tradition and scientific accuracy. The raptors stayed terrifying, but the feathery truth of their real history was left waiting for future generations to rediscover. 19. The Tyrannosaurus Rex attack in San Diego used toy cars. The climactic San Diego rampage in the Lost World dazzled audiences with images of a full-grown Tyrannosaurus Rex crashing through traffic, crushing vehicles, and sending people fleeing in terror. While much of the sequence relied on digital animation and full-scale animatronic heads, some of the most convincing destruction was achieved with a surprisingly simple tool: toy cars. The visual effects team at Industrial Light and Magic knew that miniature work could still outperform digital effects when it came to showing real weight and impact. They constructed a detailed scale model of downtown streets, complete with buildings, streetlights, and rows of small cars. Many of those cars were little more than repainted toys, the kind a child might push across a carpet. When the miniature Rex foot, built to the correct proportion, came down on the set, the toy vehicles crumpled convincingly, creating realistic debris. Cameras filmed the destruction at high speed, so that when the footage was played back at normal rate, the impact looked massive. The technique echoed the classic methods used in Japanese kaiju films, where model cities were routinely demolished by men in monster suits. Spielberg and his crew refined the method with modern precision, blending the miniature shots seamlessly with computer-generated Rex movements and animatronic close-ups. For the actors, the illusion was completed with clever editing. Scenes of Jeff Goldblum and Julianne Moore running through real city streets were cut directly against shots of toy cars being flattened in the miniature set. Audiences never noticed the difference, convinced that the monster was stomping through real traffic. The strangest part of this fact is that one of the most expensive blockbusters of the 1990s relied on toys to deliver its finale. Movie magic often hides in plain sight, disguised as childhood playthings transformed into cinematic spectacle. 20. Spielberg finished the movie early to direct Amistad. Steven Spielberg is known for his tireless energy, often juggling multiple projects at once. During the production of The Lost World, he was already planning his next passion project, the historical drama Amistad. Determined not to delay the story he felt deeply committed to telling, Spielberg made the unusual decision to accelerate the schedule of his dinosaur sequel. Incredibly, he finished The Lost World months earlier than planned so that he could shift his full attention to Amistad. This decision shaped the atmosphere on set. Crew members recalled that Spielberg often delegated large portions of the shoot to second-unit directors while he focused on the most important dinosaur sequences. Unlike the original Jurassic Park, where every detail seemed to excite him, Spielberg admitted he sometimes felt distracted. He knew he had to deliver a crowd-pleasing blockbuster, but in his heart he was already immersed in the harrowing true story of rebellion aboard a slave ship in the 19th century. Despite his divided focus, Spielberg's professionalism ensured that The Lost World still hit theaters on schedule in May of 1997. The spectacle of rampaging dinosaurs thrilled audiences, while Spielberg quickly moved on to begin filming Amistad the same year. The contrast between the two films could not have been greater. One was a roaring popcorn adventure filled with animatronics and computer graphics. The other a somber historical drama exploring justice, freedom, and humanity. What makes this fact especially strange is how one of the world's greatest directors treated a blockbuster as almost secondary, racing to complete it so he could devote himself to a story he felt truly mattered. In the end, Spielberg delivered both, proving that even when his attention was divided, he could still shape cinematic events that left lasting marks on very different genres. Which of these facts caught you unaware? Share them in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.